I got something for you. Try thinking of something that does not exist. I bet you can't. Now you might say a pink unicorn or fairies. Well, pink exists, and horses exist, and horns exist. Same thing with fairies. Humans exist, and so do wings. I don't think you can think of anything that does not exist. For example, try thinking of a color that does not exist. Try it. You can't. The idea of God could have only come from God himself.
To be a rational atheist, you cannot believe in free will. If there is no soul, then the mind is simply a property of the brain. No brain, no mind. The mind is a slave to the brain. And the mind is just a material thing that is based on chemical processes. If this is true, then we are just biochemical machines whose actions and thoughts are totally driven by our genetics and instincts, merely reacting to the environment and our surroundings. We would have no free will. You are just a machine trained to respond to given circumstances. You cannot control your actions or thoughts. So tell me, if you can't control your thoughts, then how can you trust them?
Isn't it remarkable that no one, even the most consistent moral subjectivist, believes that it is ever good to deliberately or knowingly disobey your own conscience? Even if different people's consciences tell them to do or avoid totally different things, there remains that absolute for everyone. Never disobey your own conscience. Now, where did conscience get such an absolute authority? An authority admitted even by the moral subjectivist and relativist. There are only 4 possibilities. 1. Something less than me. 2. From me. 3. From others equal to me, like society. 4. From something above me, God. Now, let's examine these 4 possibilities. Alright, number 1. Something less than me, like nature. How can I be absolutely obligated by something less than me? I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, how can something lower than me be an absolute authority over me? I mean, it's not even in the ballgame. Okay, number 2. From me. Now, how can I obligate myself absolutely? Am I absolute? Do I have the right to demand absolute obedience from anyone, even myself? I mean, if I lock myself in this prison of obligation, I can also let myself out, thus destroying the absoluteness of the obligation. So that is obviously not it. What about the third one? From others equal to me, society. Now, how can society obligate me? What right do my equals have to impose their values on me? I mean, does quantity make quality? Is society God? No, of course not. So that's obviously not it either. The only source where this absolute moral obligation comes from left is something superior to me, and that's God.
The natural position for humans is to be religious. Humans are naturally spiritual, and that we have an innate sense of God. Now then, there is no such thing as an innate or natural desire unless a satisfaction for that desire exists. A person feels hungry, there is such thing as food. A duckling wants to swim, there is such thing as water. If someone wants to cry, well, crying exists. It is very careful to note that I am not talking about an external desire, but an innate one. We have a natural sense of God. And since there is no such thing as an innate desire without a satisfaction for that desire, then God has to exist.
Our limited minds can discover eternal truths about being. But truth properly resides in the mind. But human mind is not eternal. Therefore, there must exist an eternal mind in which these truths reside. And that's God.
There have been many cases where people have had post-death experiences. Someone who had a brain aneurysm went to the hospital. It took about 30 doctors and technicians, and they found that the aneurysm was way too deep, so they had to kill that person. They cooled her body temperature down to 59 degrees, drained out all the blood in her head, they stopped her heart, they stopped her brain, no brain activity. And these were stopped for hours. Okay, so the surgeon is doing his work, and to make a long story short, he was able to repair it, and that patient is doing just fine today. And that patient's testimony was that while he was working on her, she was out of her body in watching the operation. She gave 6 points of corroboration. She drew out the exact tool he was using at a particular time, which people were there, an absolutely perfect eyewitness testimony of what happened while she was dead. Like, which doctor made the decisions, or which doctor couldn't find the artery, and all sorts of things like that. And there have been so many of these instances. One time, a doctor was working with someone who had a post-death experience and was agnostic. But you know what? Because he heard that perfect eyewitness testimony of a post-death experience, he is no longer an agnostic, he is a theist.